it's very intentional about
Yes.
building the life that you want, and how does it feel? Like, is it in
Yes.
alignment with the identity that you currently have and the future identity that you're working towards? Because that is going to
Yes.
evolve, as it should. And
Yep.
what steps do I need to take very intentionally today with myself, with the things that I value, with the people that I value, with the money that I value, to make sure that I hit that?
In today's episode, we have special guest Nick True. Nick is a financial coach specializing in cash flow optimization. He is passionate about helping people use their money to do more of what matters to them. Now, Nick also shares his insight on budgeting and using money to do more of what matters on his YouTube channel, Mapped Out Money, and he also co-hosts Mapped Out Money podcast with Hanna, his wife, where they discuss all things personal finance and money management. Now, today we're talking about cash flow optimization, and Nick gives his 3-step framework on how you can make your money work for you to do more of the things you love. With that being said, let's start the show. Hey, welcome to the Insurance Buzz. We are your hosts, Michael and Courtney Weaver. We have a special guest with us today, Nick True with Mapped Out Money. Nick, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing awesome. I'm excited to talk about one of my favorite things in the world. So I'm excited to talk to y'all about it. And, honestly, I'm always really excited when I get to talk to couples because most of the time in my line of work, I only get to talk to one person who is trying to get the other person to talk about money. And so I'm always happy when I get to talk to two people.
Oh God, we're both going to talk about money too. Like this is an open book for us. So
I love money,
Good.
man.
Good.
Like,
Good.
bring it on.
so, you obviously, man, there's a lot of places I could start right now. But before we start talking about money, dude, I want to talk about your Airstream travels, man. Like, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So we, let's see, 2015, I came across an article that was this couple that had bought an RV and were traveling the country. They'd figured out how to work remotely. And I was like, okay, this is a different way to live life. This is interesting. And my wife and I were really into camping. And so we would try to go camping and backpacking and different stuff as we could. And that kind of set us up on a 2-year journey to figure out how we could work remotely and then get an RV and hit the road. And so we hit the road in late 2017 after buying an Airstream and renovating it. And we stayed in the Airstream until fall 2020. So about 3 years. There were some periods in there where we were somewhat stationary, and then periods where we were traveling pretty aggressively. So all in between. It was a lot of fun.
Gosh. So I don't know if you know this. Do you know that we spent a few months living out of an RV with our 2 dogs and a cat?
Yes, I do. Michael told me a little about that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So the biggest question that we would get was financially, how do you prepare for something like that? And I feel like I'm glad that you led with the Airstream conversation, because I feel like you would be the best person to talk to about how do you set up working remote first. That's my first question, because we were already working remote. And then financially, what did that look like for you to prepare for being on the road? Because you were on the road for 3 years. That's a long time.
Yeah. This is going to sound like, when I say this is going to sound really obvious, but it's the thing that most people just don't do, right? So it really comes down to anytime you want to make a big life transition like this, the way I think about it is, first off, I need to really understand what are my current expenses. And then I need to understand what are the new expenses going to be when I'm on the road. How are those different at all? And how am I going to make that money work? And so for us, what that looked like is we had a really good handle on our current expenses because I've been managing our budget since we got married. So I knew exactly how much we spent doing our normal stuff. And as we started doing research and going okay, well, what are what are typical campground costs and what are gas costs if we travel this fast, and just started putting in all these different projections and trying to figure out how much I thought we would need for the heavy hitters. And so when it comes to RVing, the big things that people think of is they go, oh, well, you're probably saving so much money because you're like, in this RV and you don't have a whatever. And it's like, that's what they think, right? And you guys are shaking your heads, and it's like, no, not quite. And it's like, I used to tell people, I said, look, we stayed at a campground in rural Nowhereville, South Carolina, and we paid $200 a month for campground fees. And then we stayed in campgrounds on the coast or in Yellowstone or in Mount Zion where we were paying $1,500 a month for campground fees. And if you just stay for a couple of nights, you're going to pay just like hotel rates basically in these nice places. And then, one of my favorite ones to tell is one time we went from Tennessee to Idaho, Boise, in 4 days, because we were trying to get out there for a conference. We spent $1,100 on diesel fuel in 4 days, right? And so it's like, look, you can save money RVing, but you can also spend a ton. It just depends on how you want to do it. How quick do you want to move? How nice campgrounds do you want to stay in? And then your rig. How nice of a rig do you want to have? So I don't know that I entirely answered your question there yet, but for us, it really did come down to going like, what style of travel do we want to have? How quickly do we want to move around? And so we tended to be pretty variable. We knew what we needed monthly, like on average, to keep our campground fees out. And so we might go stay in a really nice park for a little bit, and that would be more than what our average was. And then we'd go stay in rural South Carolina for a month and save a bunch of money. So we'd bounce it around quite a bit.
Yeah, and there's a big swing, and I'm glad that you bring that up because there were many a times where I'm like, dude, we can just get an Airbnb. Like this is totally incredibly expensive.
Totally.
What were you guys doing for work at this time? Like what were your careers?
Yeah. So the way that we got started was, so maybe to back it up. So I have a background in mechanical engineering. That's what I went to school for. My wife went to school in undergrad to get like a health science degree. And then she went to physical therapy school to become a PT. And that's how we got on the road initially. Was I quit my engineering job. I had just started getting some freelance work in marketing, freelance marketing work going. I wasn't making a lot, but I was making enough that it was like, if I could just have time to throw at this full time, I think I could make this really something. And so I quit, and Hanna took a job as a travel physical therapist. And that's how we got on the road first. And so we hit the road. They sent us to South Carolina. We were there for 3 months. And she worked at a hospital there as a physical therapist. But that gave me the time I needed to ramp up my freelance marketing work. And she only ended up lasting as a PT. I say lasting. She only ended up working as a PT for 8 months before she quit to come work with me because the marketing work was going well. And then I was starting to build up my budget coaching, my mapped out money. And so she quit to come work with me full time after about 8 months. And then we got to where we were doing what we do now, which is helping people manage their money when playing with their cash flow. And so that was, we've been doing this. I started the blog in 2015. And so I've been full time, not freelancing at all since 2019 or so. So we've been doing this for a little while.
Hell yes. All right. So you just said something. This is on my list of things to talk about.
Michael made a list.
Right?
Like we're having a money conversation.
Good.
Michael has a list. Like this is how it goes. You, if you're listening to this right now, you have no idea how excited he is to have the money conversation.
Oh shit! I love money, man. I love talking about money. Like I am the guy that's like, I love money. Show me the money, baby. So you talk about cash flow optimization.
Yes.
All right. The first thing that comes to mind is, what the hell is cash flow optimization? Like I want to hear it from you. Like when
yeah.
What does that mean?
So if you just looked over my shoulder and I didn't say anything to you and you just watched me, you would think that I was doing what most people call budgeting. But most people hate the word budget, and they have this restrictive emotional no to this word budget. And the way that I do budgeting is not really what people associate with it anyways. But the reason I'm starting there is like, practically, that's a lot of what I'm doing. But let me explain why I'm choosing some different language. And that's because the way that I think about money, whether in your business or in your personal life, is I just view money as a tool. It's just a resource, right? We have a couple different resources in this life. We have our time, we have our health or our energy, and then we have our money. And money is a resource that we get and we can utilize it. And my goal is I want you to utilize it efficiently. I hope you get a ton of money, but even if you get a ton of money, you could still count it, right? We could go count Jeff Bezos' money, and at the end of his life, he will have gotten a finite amount of it. And we could look back and go like, how efficiently did he use it? Did he use it towards the things that truly mattered? And so I like to tell people like, what I try to do is I want you to spend as much money as possible on the things that matter the most to you. The question is, what matters to you and where are you currently spending? And I'm just trying to help you put your money where your mouth is. That's it, right? And so when I say cash flow optimization, that's what it is. We're optimizing to your values, your priorities, and making sure that you're actually using your money to do those things.
And from a marketing perspective, I love optimization versus budget. Boo!
Totally.
Who wants to talk about budgeting?
No one wants to talk about budgeting. No one wants to talk about it.
I'm having a full-on woo spiritual moment of like, this is incredible because you're finding out somebody's value system. So how do you figure out, like, what does your process look like to dive into? I think that's the hardest thing as human beings is really call out what we want. Like what's important to us because there's so many options.
So there's a number of ways that we can attack it, but let me just start by, let's just workshop this together. And this will be an example for y'all. And then for those listening, I think it's always more helpful to work through like a live example. So, because there's values of like life values, right? Which is like, I don't know, we value honesty and integrity in this household or something, right? And it's like, that's not exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about purchasing values and like decision-making values, which is what are the values that you use to drive the decisions you make. So y'all work with me here. Yep. If I came to visit y'all, let's say me and Hanna drive up, we come up to visit you guys. And we go out to your favorite restaurant. Where's that at? What's the restaurant?
I would say Capitol Grill is my favorite restaurant.
Okay. So that's where we're going. We're going to the Capitol Grill. And the four of us
Or
go,
I'd say
right?
Q39. God, that's a hard one. See, I'm already like going, I'm in a barbecue town. I better say barbecue thing. Anyway.
Okay. No, Q39 is great. Let's do Q39.
Let's do Q39.
So we go to Q39. We're sitting in y'all's favorite spot at this restaurant. And I've never been there. So I'm like, you know what? Hey, y'all, can y'all just order for me? Y'all just order. Let's all get the same thing. And so you guys order for all four of us. We all order the same thing. And we all get the exact same price, right? So all of us are spending money in the same way at the same time on the same item. And yet we could be doing it for very, very different reasons. One of us might be doing it because we wanted to spend time with friends. And so this is us spending money for relationships. And one of us might be doing it because we wanted convenience, because we just didn't want to have to cook and clean. And so we were like, forget that. I just want to go out. I don't really care where. I just don't want to cook and clean. Convenience. Another one of us might be doing it because we work from home all day long and we're just ready to get out of the house. And we just want to get into a new place or new experience. And so really what we're paying for here is novelty. And yet another one of us maybe truly is about the food. And we're a foodie and the food is what we value. And so maybe that is in fact what we're doing. And so even though we're buying the same product, the underlying reason behind it is totally different. And the value behind it is totally different. And so if I were to go through, if I just pulled up y'all's credit card statement and looked at all the purchases you made for the last month, a lot of what I do with clients is I look through and I go, okay, what were you valuing when you bought this? Right? Like the shirt you're wearing right now. Some people buy their shirts for comfort. Some people buy shirts because it makes them feel confident and it makes them feel a certain way. Some people buy them because the identity that they're trying to step into, the type of person they want to become, they believe wears those types of shirts. And so what I'm doing with people is I'm trying to go, if we look at how you spend your money, what are you actually buying? And are you happy that you spent money on confidence or convenience or relationships or whatever? Or would you rather spend that money somewhere else? What other types of decision-making values are really more important to you? Does that make sense?
Oh gosh, I'm writing down so many things. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Because for me, one of my value systems is really luxury. Like I like things that are very luxurious. So I will buy things that are very much in alignment of, you know, my clothes look like that. My house looks like that. Things that make me feel or look like luxury. I like that feeling.
Yep, you do.
I do. And then you look at like, I won't dance around that.
No,
I love that.
No,
I think
man. I love it.
But then there's also like, we buy experiences a lot. We like to travel. So you're going to see a lot of like experiences or health or like you're saying all these things that I'm writing down like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I'm using my money for.
Yes. And here's the rep, right? And so this is where like the values-based stuff with the decision-making process comes into play. So I'm sure y'all are familiar with like Atomic Habits, James Clear, and habit-based stuff, right? So if you look at the statistics and the research kind of around decision-making, most people that research this suggest that anywhere from 40 to 60% of every decision you make every day is done subconsciously. It's done based on habit, right? And so like these are big decisions: where you live, what you do for a living, who you marry, but it can also be really tiny decisions like, you know, back to your shirt. When you put that shirt on this morning, did you put your left arm through or your right arm first? And it's like, you didn't think about it. You didn't consciously go like, left arm, or like you didn't do that, right? You just do it. And that's how most people spend money. They're not consciously thinking about it. I eat here, I shop there, I buy on this website, I upgrade my iPhone at this time, I do this, I do that, I drive this car, I wear these clothes. Why? I don't know. That's just what I've always done, or that's what the people around me did, or that's what my family said was important, or that's what the people I hang out with at work say is important. I don't know why I do it. I just do it because of all these other pressure and influences. And so what I want is for people like you to go, no, I value luxury. And so I want to spend my money on that. Whereas if we dug in and you were like, well, crap, you know, luxury is actually a value that my parents had that I have just subconsciously sort of put on myself. But when I really think about it, it's actually not something that I value, and I would rather shift my money elsewhere. And that doesn't necessarily, I'm just using that as an example, right? I'm not saying that's true for you, but the point is for a lot of people, so much of their spending decisions are not done consciously. They're done subconsciously. And so what we're trying to do is I'm trying to get clear, like, what are your values? And then how do we bring these decisions into the conscious so that you can just shift more of your money towards the things that matter?
All right. So, because I'm like the how-to. Okay. So
yeah, how-to. How do you do it?
Deep ass conversation to figure out what's actually truly important, which in itself is an art. So that's amazing. But then once someone great, okay, I now understand what I'm doing. I don't like what I'm doing. This is what I would rather put more money towards. What does that look like? Because I think that's probably the most difficult part of the equation. Fair?
Yeah. Yeah. So overarchingly, right, like this conversation now that we're going into practical how to do it, I want to be very clear, like what camp this is in. This is in the optimization of spending side, right? Because I believe with money, like if you're not where you want to be financially, there's two things you can do, right? You can spend less or you can make more. And I think most people tend to focus too much on one or the other. They come super in the frugal camp. They're like, I'm just going to not spend money, right? Just get there. And other people are like, I'm never going to pay attention to anything that I spend and just make as much money as possible. And the problem with that is those people, they tend to make a bunch of money, but if they don't do the other work, then they subconsciously just spend and spend and spend and spend and raise their lifestyle based on other people around them, and it's not their value. So the question you just asked squarely is in the, okay, how do we optimize camp? I still want you to go make more money, but how do we optimize what we are making? And so the way that practically I do this, so I have like a 3-step framework that I walk people through, right? And so the words are very simple. It's just track, plan, spend. And I just liken this to a road trip. So if I were to, let's say I currently live in Knoxville, Tennessee. So let's say that I'm like, I want to go up to, my friends up in West Washington. And I know that it's somewhere that direction. Now, if I just get in my car and I throw my phone out the window and just start driving, the odds of me getting there are probably pretty slim. And that's how most people live financially, right? And so it's like the first step is just turn on the GPS, figure out what's going on, track your money, right? So like you can use a budgeting tool, you can use software, you can use a pencil and a piece of paper, you can use an Excel spreadsheet. I don't really care, but like you need to know how much money do I bring in and where is it going, right? So I use a software tool that links to my banks and, pulls it in and I categorize it and that kind of stuff. That's step one. Now, it's important in step one that you don't judge any of what you're doing. You just pull the data in so that you have it. Step two is the part we kind of have already gotten into, which is the planning piece of like, what do you care about? What do you want? What matters? And the planning piece, right, with our road trip analogy is putting in the address of where we're trying to go. The planning piece is going, all right, where do you want your life to be in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, right? What vision do you have for your life? And we have a process, and we can talk through that too if y'all want, but a process for how I kind of walk that through. And as part of that conversation, there's two pieces, right? There's your values and then there's your vision. So the vision is your roadmap for where you're going, and then the values are what help you drive decision making. So if we have those two things, we know where your money's at, and then we know what you want to be doing. Then the third step, spend, is we go, all right, like bring these two in alignment. And so very practically what that looks like is literally going through the data that we have because we tracked it and pulling up the values and the vision and going, am I actually spending money in a way that's helping me do this? And if we don't, then let's change it. Let's go, actually, that's not what is in alignment. So I'll give you a super practical example for me and Hanna, back to the eating out thing. So for us, this was when we were on the road. This is a little bit different now that we're stationary, but when we were on the road, one of our highest priorities and values was novelty and time with each other. So new experiences, that's why we're traveling, and novelty, time with each other. And we were inside our RV during the day because we're just working at the RV, right? And so we found ourselves going out a lot, right? Going out to eat, going out for coffee, whatever, going out a lot, which was fine. But the problem was, eventually you're like, oh crap, I'm starting to like get tight on money, right? And so at some point you're going to kind of rub up against things. Again, this is where it's like, yes, increase your income, but also like optimize the income you have. And so for us, what we did is we said, okay, let's go through this values exercise. Why are we going out to eat? For us, our primary motivations were novelty, new experiences, and time with each other. Actually has nothing to do with the food. And so what we did is we said, okay, is there a way that I can get those same values and spend way less money? But I still get the value, right? I'm not sacrificing on the thing that I want. And for us, when we were looking at kind of the way we were living at the time, transitioning our spending to coffee shops made a lot more sense, because now we could spend the exact same dollar amount per month going to coffee shops instead of going out to dinner, and just go way more. And we get the value way more for spending way less money. And that's one little example of the way, but it's by asking that question. Is there a way you can get the same value by spending somewhere else?
Yeah, you're chasing the feeling. What's the feeling that you were aspiring towards? And how do what's the most efficient way to get this that's still in alignment with our vision?
You got it.
So
you got it.
And you're bringing up a lot of these values. What do you see like common values that come up with most people?
Yeah, for sure. So like, family relationships, those are big ones, right? Obviously. Some people, it's really funny. There are some that are very polarizing. So some people like either really value convenience and will pay for like they'll pay for the house cleaner, they'll pay for like the service to be done, they'll pay for da 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 da, da, and that's like really important to them. And some people are the complete opposite. Convenience is one of those where it's like it's almost like it's in your top 3 or it's not there at all. So that's kind of a funny one. And then the other one, another one would be like independence. And so what we'll do in those situations is we try to make sure there's enough flexibility in the budget or in your plan to have freedom to not feel so restrictive, right? And so like for me and Hanna, as part of our monthly planning and monthly, budget or cash flow, whatever you want to call it, we both get the same amount every single month to do whatever we want to with it. And so even though yes, we're budgeting and yes, we're tracking all the money because we both get a set amount each month to just literally do whatever. And if we don't spend it, it builds and goes into the next month. It allows us to have some level of independence. Other common ones are going to be new experiences. People typically, that means travel, but I like to call it new experiences because most of the time it's novelty that people are looking for. Whereas like travel to the same place over and over again, people are looking for nostalgia, which is different, right? Like, oh, my family always goes to this beach. We've been going there 20 years. It's like, that's a different thing. And you'll spend money on those trips very differently. And then another common one would be comfort, right? This just feels good. Lots of C's. Confidence is one, right? And then, like I said, identity is a big one. And so identity, it's normally around a certain type of identity, right? So like people who want to be healthy, right? I want to be the type of person that cares about their health. It's like, that's a high value. So then that means you're going to spend money on certain things that other people aren't, right? Whereas other identity would be, this comes into play a lot with parents, is their identity around parenting and what a parent should do for their kids and what a parent should spend and provide for their kids. And so those are conversations I end up having a lot around, is it your job to pay for your kids at 2 years old? Yeah. Is it your job to pay for your kids at 10? Yeah. Is it your job to pay for your kids at 32?
No.
Right?
Oh.
So it's those are tough conversations I have a lot, right? Especially when they're a big burden on the parents' budgets.
Yeah, that's guilt. There's a lot of guilt that comes with the energy of money.
Yep.
So navigating and holding space for those conversations. I mean,
yes.
I don't even know where to go with that, because even when you were saying should, anytime a should comes up is either guilt or
Gotta
shame. Like there's something that's happening there that we need to dive into deeper. You were going to touch base on the framework. I would love to go into that a little bit more on, like, not necessarily the values, because I think we tackled the values, but how do you get a shared vision, especially as partners? And Michael, I know that you were hyped about this conversation, but the minute he started talking about values, Nick, the minute you said that, I was like, I have hijacked this podcast. This is now my podcast. We're going to talk about the values. We're going to talk about spirituality. We're going to talk about shame and guilt around money. Anyways.
No, but I love this because I was going to ask the same thing. Like, especially couples, like my value may be different than your value system. And so how do you...
They are.
So now you got to have this vision that comes together.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, this is where, like, I should have made sure Hanna was free today. She's tied up, but like, this is where, Hanna and I balance each other out a lot. Right. And so, let me try and give you the framework or the practical piece for how I try to attack this. And it starts with this simple idea. So when I was getting married, the guy that officiated our wedding, he was a good friend of mine. He was my like college pastor. And he gave me some advice that someone had given him that he was sort of passing along. And it just really stuck with me. And he said, the best marriages work when both people wake up in the morning and ask the question, what can I do to serve the other person today? And I liked that language better than like, what can I do to love them? Loving loving is obviously also important, but when you add the word serve in there, it gives you a different flavor to this idea. And so in an ideal world, both people would come together around this vision and values situation and go, what would Nick want? Right? And how do I know him well enough to think what he would want? Right? And then Hanna would say, or then I would say, what would Hanna want? Right? What would Hanna want in this vision document? What would she want on here? And if both people are asking that question, and then there's a way for us to work together towards the highest and most important. So what this means looks like practically is that our top 1, 2, 3 things on our vision and values for both people, we're trying to get all of that, right? But what you'll often realize is that if you were to like rank order some different stuff, what Hanna cares about at like a level 10, I actually care about it like a level 3. Like I have kind of an opinion about it, but it really matters to her. And so I'm willing to give on that. And then what I care about at like a level 10, she often doesn't, right? And so she gives on that. Now, obviously there are some scenarios where you both care about something at level 10 and it's a disagreement, and that becomes its own little thing that we have to work through. But in general, for the most part, if you've married somebody, there's going to be some opposites here that will help balance each other out. And so let me give you something practical. We literally have, so Hanna and I have a vision document that's bookmarked in my folder, and we review this thing every quarter. So every quarter we take a couple of days and we do kind of a retreat together and plan for our life. Now we work in our business together, so we also do business planning, but like you guys, we're married, and so we also do life planning. And so every quarter we sit down and we go through this document, and at the top of the document we have our values. And then the next section, we have our ideal day and ideal weeks. And then the next section is 2023, 2024, 2027, 2030, kind of do 1, 3, 5-ish years. And we break this out into life, family, relationships, and finance. So those are the 3 groupings under each header. And this is not like an 18-page business plan. It's more just like quick bullet points of like, by next year in our life, what would we have liked to achieve? Under there is where we have habits and hobbies that we're working on, and we have travel goals that we're working on. And then we have family and relationships. How often do we want to see family? What do we want that to look like? What do we want our relationships to be with each other and with our immediate family? And then finances, how much money do we want to be making? How much money do we want to have? Yada, 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 right? This is the part where we have the give and take. Because maybe Hanna has something that's really, really important to her. And so if that's the case, I want to try and figure that out. And for us, so we had a pretty, I don't know if I say volatile, but we had a very tough relationship with money early on in our marriage. We did not, so we made $12,000 our first year of marriage. And we were living off savings, and then we made $12K. And so it was tight, obviously. And,
it feels like you're laughing to cover up the pain.
It was, it was painful. It was like, and when we've talked about this, like on our, YouTube channel stuff, but like, so we fought a lot in that first year, about money. And it was mostly me instigating it. But when I look back, and now that we've done a lot of this work to try and understand the way we think and the way we interact with money and the way we come at it, I can look back and go, oh, okay, there's some good meaning behind things. And that's, your original question was like, how do you come together on this vision thing, right? And part of it is, if you put yourself in the other person's shoes and have empathy for them, you can actually start to see their perspective. So here's a real tangible example. We fought on our honeymoon over Hanna wanting to buy a $50 necklace. And like, it was a very low point for me. It's not something I'm proud of. But what happened is we were traveling, we were on this cruise, and it was like we got off the boat, yada, yada. And she found this necklace, and she wanted to buy it. It's like $50. And I lost it. I just flipped out. I just freaked out about it. And we started fighting about it. And then we ended up fighting the rest of the evening. And what happened when I look back is I go, okay, I live so far in the future that I'm thinking about the fact that we got married because I had done the math and figured out that we had 10 grand in savings. We were both still in school. So like we got married, I was 20, she was in grad school, I was finishing up. And we had like 10 grand in savings and I was making about 12 as an intern. And I knew that every month we were depleting that savings account. And I knew that we had basically enough money until I graduated to get a job. And so every month we're depleting it. And even though the math worked out on paper, I'm stressed as all get out because I'm like, if we don't freaking stick to the plan, then we're gonna blow up and I'm gonna have to go ask my parents for money, which I really didn't want to do, and yada yada, right? And so like in my head, I'm freaking out about this $50 because it wasn't in the plan. I'm like, the plan was to do this, right? $50 necklace, not the plan, right? And so I'm freaking out because I'm like stressed because I see it as my role as like the budgeting money guy to make sure that we freaking make this work. So it's coming from a good place of me trying to go, I want our marriage to work. I want our money to work. I don't want us to be in a stressed out spot. And I want to make sure that we're going to be okay. Now, Hannah's coming at this and going, I'm so excited to be married. I'm so excited that we're here. I want to remember this forever. And I want to make sure that I have something that I can look back on and go, that was so great. And she's equally thinking about the future, but just in a different way. And it took us a long time to figure out where each other was coming from. But when you can start to ask questions to get at that, then coming together around creating a vision document becomes much easier because now we can put ourselves in each other's shoes and try to think about how we can work in their vision. And if both people are doing that, then you both get what you want.
Mm.
That's good.
Yeah.
And I do like, obviously you have to work on communication but
yes.
I think what you're talking, a vision document, I think is, we actually just sat down this past weekend and did a vision board for 2023.
Nice. Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
But I love that you guys are doing that for life, business, everything quarterly.
Well, and it's, what I'm hearing is it's very intentional about
Yes.
building the life that you want, and how does it feel? Like, is it in
Yes.
alignment with the identity that you currently have and the future identity that you're working towards? Because that is going to
Yes.
evolve, as it should. And
Yep.
what steps do I need to take very intentionally today with myself, with the things that I value, with the people that I value, with the money that I value, to make sure that I hit that. So I love that you're bringing that up, and thank you for sharing that story, because that's, I think a lot of people, us included, can relate to having those moments of acting out of a place where you did have good intentions, but how it came out was shitty.
Totally. That's not what you
And
want.
even if it is good intentions, a lot of times it's still acting out of fear too.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we haven't all been there, but yeah, we've definitely been paycheck to paycheck and broke as shit. And
Oh,
it's
when you
like,
were saying that $12,000,
I don't want to
I
go
was
back
like,
there ever again.
oh my God, our first apartment was 300 square feet. And we were like, I'm going to 4 grocery stores and I'm paying
Yes.
for gas with change out of a cup holder. It's like, yeah, dude, I know that.
Yeah.
But you do have to be aware of your situation. And I guess my question to you, one thing that you said in the beginning was when you were talking about the track aspect of it, to not judge it. How do you coach not judging that? Because that's an initial response to want to label yourself
Shame.
as something.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a couple of things that I ask, right? The first is I try to just more encourage and set up our expectations around the process, right? Because most of my clients, this is not always true, but a lot of my clients that I work with are in their 40s and up, right? The vast majority are 40 up. Every now and again, I'll work with somebody in their 20s and 30s, but most of the time, life has not kicked them in the face hard enough yet to realize they really need to have a better plan around how to manage their money. And so most of the time what happens with that age group is they're They're just trying to make money. They're trying to get stuff going. They're trying to get stuff moving. They're not thinking about the managing piece. And then what happens is you get into your 40s or your 50s, you got 2 or 3 kids, you got private school, you got all kinds of insane stuff going on, and you just feel like you're grasping for air, right? And then a lot of my clients, probably 30% are retired. And what happens is they get to retirement and they realize, oh crap, like I've never lived on a fixed income and now I have to. So to answer your question, there's a lot of judgment around it. And the reason I set it up that way is because these people have had 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of spending money a certain way. We're not going to change that overnight. It's not going to happen. And so I try to encourage them to say, listen, you will not get out of this or change these behaviors in a week. And so just embrace this slow process. And all we're trying to do is to just track it. And so I literally tell people, like, if you look on your phone and you're like, I don't have any money left for groceries this month or going out to eat. Go anyways. I don't care. Like, it's your first month. Just go. Like, I'm just trying to get you awareness to what you're doing. Now, most people, that is helpful, but to your point, easier said than done. And so what we start doing there is we start trying to dissect, why do you feel judgment on yourself around certain areas of spending? For most people, they don't feel too much judgment around all of it, but there's a handful of types of spending or categories that they really struggle with, that they feel like, I waste too much money there. And so then what I ask is I try to ask them to go, why do you feel that way about that category? And I try to help them see if this is a belief that they have that is coming from somewhere else, or if it's a belief that is coming from their own value system and is a reminder to them that this is actually not a top priority. Because if it's a belief coming from somewhere else, then that is not a belief that's serving them. But if it's a belief around their own value system, that's helpful. And we can use that as a guiding compass to direct in the future. And so it's not about getting upset with yourself. It's about going, that's interesting that I feel this way.
What are the...
I'm going to use that information to change in the future.
What are the, sorry, I got so excited because you said struggle categories and I immediately am like, okay, what are they? What are the ones that are common that we're struggling with?
Yeah. So food in general, right? So groceries and eating out are big ones. Especially takeout. People have a lot of shame around like takeout. And a lot of the time it's because, especially for women, it's because they feel like they should be cooking. Right. And so they feel like if I get takeout, I cheated. Right. I spent too much money because they already feel this pressure to feel like they should have cooked for their family. And so that's a really, really common one. A lot of parents struggle with anything that is for them. The second the kids come into play, now it's like, I struggle to spend money on myself. And they will justify spending a ton of money on kids stuff, but really struggle on themselves. So food is one, and then self-spending for parents is a big one. And then I would say the other one would be, this is probably pretty obvious, but let's call it vices, right? So alcohol, smoking, tobacco products, anything like that. People have a lot of shame around that stuff. I mean, that's, my job's kind of interesting because I get to know people really quick, right? Because the second you show me where all your money goes, we get to know each other really well, really fast. So it's sort of an interesting thing, right? Because your spending is a reflection of what you prioritized. Not necessarily what you value, but certainly what you've prioritized. And our goal is to align those two things. So I would say those are the ones that I consistently see people having shame around.
Oh, that's great. So I am a huge win the day
Yep.
every single day. So I have to ask you this, for anyone that may be struggling with their money right now, whether that's the actual budgeting part, investing part, maybe it's just their money mindset. I don't know. Yeah. What is something that they could do every single day to build that muscle?
It's a good question. So I would say, can I give you two?
Yes.
The more, the better.
Yeah, keep it going.
So one is the track piece, right? And the reason I say every day is because, so like I use a budgeting tool that's called YNAB. It's short for You Need a Budget. It's terrible branding because no one wants to have a budget, but that's the tool that I use. As part of that, every day, I open it up, I import the transactions from the day before, and I make sure that they got categorized correctly. YNAB does a good job for the most part, but sometimes, that's actually gas, or that's actually groceries or whatever, right? I switch it up. And so I'm laying eyes on it every day. Why? Because I'm trying to align my money with my values and my priorities. And I need up-to-date data to do that. My wife also uses this to make spending decisions. So she needs it to be up to date if she's out and about and wants to buy something. So every day, I track my money. And it takes me less than 5 minutes, because if you're doing it every day, even the people that I've seen that have like 5 kids with credit cards and 2 adults working and insanity going on, even those families have like maybe 7, 8 transactions a day, right? And so if you're looking at it every day, it's super fast. That's awareness piece. It's super important, right? And I just do that as part of my habit stack, like in the morning, right? Now, the second piece is more on the emotional side, which is no one talks about this stuff. And so you highly likely that you do not have people in your life that you can talk to about money, and that you can talk to about making money, about spending money, about how you do it. Like you just can't do it. And so a lot of this advice comes from the whole Jim Rohn, you're the average of the people you spend the most time with idea of like going like, you need to start surrounding yourself with people who talk about money and normalize that conversation. And so for me early on, that means like either start spending time on some forums, start listening to some good interview podcasts, start watching some YouTube channels, start reading some books. I don't care what it is, but get consumption into your brain every day, at least for a few minutes, and hear conversations of people talking about money so that you can normalize this idea of not being restrictive, but of using your money to do things that matter to you. And consistently, the people that I see that are able to get around that, it will just by osmosis start helping you think more that way.
No, I love those.
I do too, because I read something the other day that was talking about money and put it in the context of if money was a person, based on how you treat it and how you talk about it, would they stay around? And
I like
starting
that. That's
to
good.
get it. Yeah. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay, so you're talking about podcasts and books. I want to know your favorite like money books. Like if somebody right now is like, all right, I'm in it. Let's go.
Yeah. I would say if I had to pick just one overarching, I would start with The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. It's fantastic. And it's like to me, it's a great, just in general, money book. I would then probably move to something that would just like help you rethink what's even possible. So I would go to something like The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins, or Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin. To try and expose yourself to like, oh, there are people who play this game totally differently than the way that I'm used to seeing people play. Ramit Sethi's How to Win, or what is it? I'll Teach You to Be Rich is really great. It's very funny and witty, especially if you're a little bit younger, you'll like eat it up. So those are some 3 like what I would call general personal finance books that I've loved. That's where I would start.
Nice. Psychology of Money is awesome.
It's fantastic. Like, it's fantastic.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got the green cover. It's in our it's green and white cover. That's how I remember. Like, yeah, no, I'm totally in on that. So I want to speak to somebody out here that's listening right now that's like, yes, they're nodding their heads up and down. Who are you currently working with? Like, who would you say is your ideal customer so they can know if they're in alignment to reach out to you to move forward?
Yeah. So I would actually give two answers to that, because there's really kind of two primary people that I work with the most. The first is kind of who I described a little bit ago, which is like midlife, family, maybe even like dealing with, I got my kids, but then I'm also having to think about my parents. And like, I just got a lot of moving parts with my money. Maybe you work, maybe your spouse works, maybe both of you work. Like you would say, gosh, I make pretty good money and I just never know where it is. It's just gone. I never have enough to get through. Like that kind of person, that midlife. I help a lot of those people. Now, the second person I would describe would be that a little bit younger as well, but with a small business. And so a lot of what I'm doing right now, about almost nearly half of my clients these days is starting to become more small business owners, where it's like, it's you and a very, very small team, maybe you and a couple of contractors, and you're struggling with like, how much do I pay myself? How do I pay myself consistently? How do I manage the money on the business side? And the reason I say small business owners, because for small business owners, your personal life and your business is so entwined. And like how well the business is doing deeply affects you on the personal side, both financially and emotionally. And a lot of it is intertwined. And so with those people, we end up trying to have these conversations about both aspects. We typically start with the personal, because you're building a business to build a dream life. And so we start with the personal, figure out what that is. And then we can actually go and set like business stuff based on the personal, right? Because if you're just like, I want to build a business that does this much money, but it's like, why? Well, I don't know. It sounded cool. It's like, right? It's like, whereas if you go, no, this is what I want with my life. And so I need to go build a business that's going to make that happen. Now the business targets become much more meaningful. So those two groups.
Hell yes.
Oh, I love that so much. We always say create a life first and then build your
Yes.
business around that. Like,
Bingo.
what do you want? Make a life before you make a living, because that's
Yes.
really where it's going to count. Nick, I could vibe with you all day long.
Yeah, man. We might have to do this again. This is good.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking
We'll
the
do
whole
it.
time he's talking, I'm like, okay, we have to bring you into our academy. Our members need to hear directly from you. This is
I would love that. I'd love
Nick,
that.
if somebody did, so obviously Mapped Out Money, that's YouTube,
Yes.
that is what, podcast. But how else?
Yep.
If somebody wanted to follow you, connect with you, what's the easiest way for them to do that?
Yeah, those two places are the places we're most active. I kind of shared this with y'all a little bit earlier. We've had a lot going on in our personal life this last year. And so if you go to those two places right now, you might go, what? I haven't posted anything in a while. And so I would say if you want to get the most up-to-date stuff, go to our website, sign up for the email newsletter. That comes out regularly. Just mappedoutmoney.com is the homepage. Sign up there. We're pretty active on our newsletter. And later this year, we will be getting very, very active again on our podcast and our YouTube channel.
I love it. And then do you have any like courses or anything that you do throughout the year?
We do, yeah. So the 3 steps I shared earlier, track, plan, spend. If you want help working through those pieces and defining, well, how do I track my money? And then how do I come up with my plan and my vision and my values? And then how do I align all that? We have a program that we run called Ahead in 100. And we help you get ahead with your money in 100 days. And we do that about every 100 days. And so we'll have our new group coming up in the spring, probably mid to late March will be open enrollment for that group. So we do, 3 or 4 of those a year.
Perfect. Well, brother, man, this was fantastic. I loved it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. So, and for all of those that are listening, y'all rock. We love you. We appreciate you. As always, time is the most valuable and important asset that we all have. We appreciate you spending time with us today. Go out and make it great.